Commander Vex-9 clicked his mandibles in what passed for amusement among the Kaelthri. Here he was, sitting across from what had to be the most pathetic delegation in galactic history. 3 humans. Just 3. The entire Terran species had sent exactly 3 representatives to negotiate the terms of their surrender. How quaint. The lead negotiator was a woman named Elena Vasquez, her graying hair pulled back in what humans called a bun. She wore a simple black suit that looked like it had seen better decades. To her left sat Marcus Webb, a lanky fellow whose nervous habit of tapping his fingers on the polished obsidian table was already grating on Vex-9's nerves. The third human, Arya Nox, appeared to be taking notes on an actual paper notebook. Paper. As if their primitive writing materials would somehow preserve the moment when humanity bent the knee. Commander Vex-9, Elena began, her voice steady despite the circumstances, we appreciate your willingness to meet with us today. Vex-9's translator unit rendered her words into perfect Kaelthri, though it couldn't quite capture the subtle defiance he detected in her tone. How adorable. The humans still thought they had bargaining power. The pleasure is mine, Ambassador Vasquez, Vex-9 replied, his own voice carrying the harmonic undertones that made lesser species uncomfortable. Though I must confess, I expected a larger delegation. Surely Earth can spare more than 3 representatives for such momentous discussions? Marcus Webb shifted in his seat, and Vex-9 caught the brief flash of something in the human's eyes. Fear? Good. These mammals needed to understand their position. Quality over quantity, Commander, Elena responded smoothly. We believe these talks will be more productive with fewer voices at the table. Vex-9 allowed himself a low rumble of laughter. The Kaelthri had conquered 47 star systems in the past century alone. Their fleet currently held orbital positions around every major human world. Their gravity weapons had reduced the human fleet to scrap metal in less than 6 hours. And yet here sat this woman, speaking as if she held any cards at all. Of course, he said, activating a holographic display that showed the current military situation. Red markers indicated Kaelthri positions, while the pathetically few blue dots represented remaining human assets. Perhaps we should begin with the reality of your situation. As you can see, your military has been neutralized. Arya Nox looked up from her notebook for the first time. Neutralized is a strong word, Commander. Temporarily inconvenienced might be more accurate. The audacity. Vex-9's combat glands released a burst of stimulants, and he had to consciously suppress his aggressive posture. Ms. Nox, your entire home guard was destroyed in the first wave. Your orbital platforms are debris. Your manufacturing centers are under our control. What exactly would you call this situation? Tuesday, Arya replied, returning to her notes. The silence that followed was so complete that Vex-9 could hear the subtle hum of the station's life support systems. He studied the 3 humans more carefully. Elena maintained her diplomatic mask, but something flickered behind her eyes. Marcus had stopped his finger tapping, and his shoulders had straightened slightly. And Arya? Arya was smiling as she wrote. You find this amusing? Vex-9 asked, his vocal harmonics shifting into a more threatening register. Oh, absolutely, Arya said without looking up. See, Commander, you've made a classic mistake. You've confused winning battles with winning wars. Your species has no capacity for extended warfare, Vex-9 stated flatly. Our intelligence indicates that humans require extensive supply lines, suffer from morale issues during prolonged conflicts, and lack the technological advantage necessary for asymmetric warfare. Elena leaned forward slightly. Your intelligence is thorough, Commander. Tell me, what did your analysts conclude about human psychological resilience under extreme pressure? Vex-9 accessed his briefing files through his neural interface. Humans demonstrate significant stress responses to life-threatening situations, leading to impaired decision-making and reduced combat effectiveness. Elena mused. And what about human adaptability? Limited. Humans require stable environmental conditions and struggle to modify their behavior patterns when faced with superior technology. Marcus Webb finally spoke up. Commander, how many wars has the Kaelthri Empire fought? 47 successful conquest campaigns, Vex 9 replied proudly. And how many of those civilizations had previously fought extinction-level conflicts? Vex 9 paused. The question seemed irrelevant, but something in Webb's tone suggested otherwise. I fail to see the relevance. None of them, Webb continued. We checked. 47 species, all defeated after their first major military loss. All technologically advanced, all logically minded, all capable of recognizing when continued resistance was futile. As should you, Vex 9 pointed out. Your position is hopeless. Arya looked up again, and this time her smile was genuinely unsettling. Commander, let me ask you something. In your extensive military experience, have you ever encountered a species that fought 2 global wars against itself? Wars so devastating that they literally invented new ways to destroy entire cities? No species would be foolish enough to. We did, Arya interrupted. Twice. In less than 30 years. And you know what we learned from those experiences? Vex 9 felt the first stirring of something unfamiliar. Not fear, certainly. The Kaelthri knew no fear. But, unease, perhaps. We learned that winning and losing are temporary conditions, Elena said, taking over seamlessly. We learned that technology gaps can be overcome. We learned that superior firepower doesn't guarantee victory. And most importantly, we learned that sometimes the only way to win is to make the cost of victory too high for your enemy to bear. You're threatening us? Vex 9's combat stance was fully activated now, his natural weapon systems coming online. Oh, Commander, Marcus said softly, we're not threatening you. We're educating you. The main display suddenly flickered, and Vex 9's attention snapped to it. The tactical map was changing. New contacts were appearing throughout Kaelthri-controlled space. Hundreds of them. Small, fast-moving objects that hadn't been there moments before. What is this? Vex 9 demanded, his claws extending involuntarily. Elena checked her watch. That would be Phase 1. Impossible. Our sensors would have detected any approaching fleet. Fleet? Arya laughed, actually laughed. Commander, you're thinking too conventionally. Those aren't ships. Vex 9's neural implants were flooding him with priority alerts from Kaelthri command structures throughout human space. Ships were reporting system failures, communication blackouts, and mysterious explosions in their engine compartments. You see, Elena continued conversationally, while you were busy destroying our military, we were busy implementing Plan B. Every human world you conquered? Every orbital facility you captured? Every supply depot you now control? They all came with a little something extra. Sabotage is a violation of the Geneva Convention? Marcus interjected. Commander, that's a human document. It doesn't apply to alien invaders. Besides, we prefer to think of it as deferred maintenance. The tactical display was now showing cascading failures throughout the Kaelthri fleet. Not destruction, Vex 9 realized, but systematic degradation. His ships weren't being blown up, they were being slowly, methodically disabled. How? He whispered. Arya finally closed her notebook and stood up. For a moment, Vex 9 thought she was simply stretching. Then he noticed that Elena and Marcus were also rising. Their casual, almost bored demeanor was gone, replaced by something far more dangerous. Commander, Arya said, her voice now carrying an edge that made Vex 9's combat instinct scream warnings, let me tell you about human engineering. We don't just build things to work. We build them to work until we don't want them to work anymore. Elena stepped forward, and suddenly the 3 humans seemed much larger than their physical dimensions suggested. Every component you captured, every system you now depend on, every piece of human technology keeping your forces supplied and operational? It's all been on a timer, Commander. A very, very long timer. You're bluffing, Vex-9 said, but his voice lacked conviction. Marcus smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. The beauty of human duplicity, Commander, is that we've had thousands of years to perfect it. We've been betraying, backstabbing, and outmaneuvering each other since we learned to throw rocks. You think 47 conquest campaigns prepared you for us? The alerts from Vex-9's fleet were becoming more urgent. Ships were losing life support. Weapons systems were failing. Navigation computers were providing false readings. And throughout it all, the human-built infrastructure was operating perfectly, for whoever had the right access codes. This is impossible, Vex-9 repeated, but he was no longer addressing the humans. He was talking to himself, trying to process how his perfect campaign had suddenly become a nightmare. Arya walked around the table, moving with a predatory grace that Vex-9's prey recognition systems immediately flagged as dangerous. You want to know the real joke, Commander? This isn't even our best plan. This is just what we do to buy time while we figure out something really creative. Elena joined her, and now they were flanking him. The thing about humans, Commander, is that we don't know when to quit. It's our greatest weakness and our greatest strength. You can defeat us, occupy our worlds, destroy our fleets, and we'll still find a way to make your life miserable. Some of us, Marcus added, moving to complete their triangle around him, consider it an art form. Vex-9's mandibles clattered involuntarily. What do you want? Now that, said Arya, her smile returning full force, is a much better question. Vex-9's question hung in the air like a death sentence waiting to be read. The three humans exchanged glances, and he caught something passing between them. Not words, not signals, but some primitive form of communication that his advanced sensors couldn't decode. What we want, Elena said slowly, settling back into her chair with the casual confidence of someone who had just revealed a royal flush, is very simple, Commander. We want you to leave. Leave? Vex-9's vocal harmonics cracked slightly. You cannot seriously expect the Kaelthri Empire to simply abandon 47 conquered systems because of some minor sabotage. Arya laughed, a sound that somehow managed to be both musical and terrifying. Minor sabotage? Commander, let me paint you a picture. Right now, your flagship's life support is operating on backup power. Your weapons array is locked in diagnostic mode. Your navigation computer thinks you're orbiting a gas giant in the Andromeda galaxy. And your food synthesizers? Well, let's just say they're about to develop some very interesting flavor profiles. Marcus pulled out what appeared to be a primitive communication device. Fleet Command, this is Admiral Webb. Execute Protocol 7. Admiral? Vex-9 sputtered. You introduced yourself as a cultural attaché. I lied, Marcus said with a shrug. It's another one of those human traits you might want to add to your intelligence files. The tactical display erupted in chaos. Across human space, Kaelthri ships were reporting complete system failures. But more disturbing were the new contacts appearing on sensors. Ships that hadn't been there before, broadcasting human identification codes. Ghost Fleet, Elena explained helpfully. We've been building them in asteroid fields, abandoned stations, even hollowed-out moons. Amazing what you can accomplish when your enemy is too busy congratulating themselves on their easy victory. Vex-9's head was spinning. This is impossible. Our intelligence indicated that humanity's industrial capacity was completely eliminated. Your intelligence, Arya said, standing up again and beginning to pace, was based on the assumption that humans build things the same way you do. Centralized. Efficient. Logical. She paused. We don't. Human manufacturing, Marcus continued, is beautifully, chaotically distributed. Every basement workshop, every garage, every abandoned warehouse can become a production facility. Every human with a 3D printer and access to raw materials becomes a potential weapons manufacturer. Elena activated her own holographic display, showing a three-dimensional map of human space. You see these red zones you marked as pacified? Look closer. Vex 9 leaned forward, his optical sensors adjusting to maximum resolution. What he saw made his combat glands flood his system with enough stimulants to kill a lesser species. The pacified zones were alive with activity. Thousands of tiny heat signatures, power readings, and electromagnetic emissions painted a picture of a civilization that was anything but conquered. Underground networks, Elena said matter-of-factly. We've been building them for decades. Not because we expected alien invasion, mind you, but because we've learned that sometimes your own government becomes the enemy. Humans have a saying, trust, but verify. We prefer don't trust, and have a backup plan. And a backup plan for the backup plan, Arya added cheerfully. And a backup plan for the backup plan's backup plan, Marcus finished. Vex 9's mandibles were chattering so rapidly they were generating a high-pitched whine. What do you want from us? Oh, that's the beautiful part, Arya said, her smile becoming positively predatory. We don't want anything from you, Commander. We want something for you. I don't understand. Elena leaned back in her chair, steepling her fingers. Commander, how familiar are you with human military history? Sufficient to plan our campaign. Really? Tell me about the Winter War. Vex 9 accessed his files. Finnish-Soviet conflict, 1939. The Soviets possessed overwhelming numerical and technological superiority. And? Vex 9 paused, suddenly uncomfortable with where this was heading. The Finns inflicted disproportionate casualties before eventual defeat. Try again, Marcus suggested. What was the strategic outcome? Vex 9's translator unit struggled with the concept. The Soviets achieved their territorial objectives but suffered such heavy losses that their military reputation was severely damaged, contributing to subsequent strategic failures. Bingo, Arya said, clapping her hands. Now tell me about Vietnam. American technological superiority versus indigenous resistance movement. The Americans possessed overwhelming firepower advantages. Outcome? Vex 9's silence stretched for several long moments. American withdrawal despite tactical superiority. Afghanistan? Elena prompted. Soviet occupation, 1979 to 1989. Superior forces versus local resistance. British occupation, 1839 to 1842 and 1878 to 1880. American occupation, 2001 to 2021. Each example hit Vex 9 like a physical blow. His species had studied human military capabilities, but they had focused on technology, logistics, and conventional tactics. They had completely missed the pattern. You see the theme, don't you? Marcus asked gently. Humans have a very specific talent. We can lose every battle and still win the war. We specialize, Arya continued, in making occupation so expensive, so bloody, and so psychologically devastating that our enemies eventually decide that whatever they wanted from us isn't worth the cost. Elena stood up, and when she spoke, her voice carried the authority of someone representing not just a government, but an entire species' accumulated rage. Commander, you want to know what we're offering you? We're offering you the chance to leave before we really get started. This is already your best effort? Vex 9 asked, though he suspected he wouldn't like the answer. Oh, honey, Arya said, and her tone was so condescending that Vex 9's combat instincts wanted to tear her throat out. This isn't us fighting. This is us being polite. Marcus activated another display, this one showing surveillance footage from occupied human worlds. Vex 9 watched Kaelthri soldiers going about their daily routines, secure in their conquered territories. See those patrols? Notice how relaxed they look. How comfortable. They are in secure zones. They think they are, Elena corrected. But notice the humans in the background. The shopkeepers, the street cleaners, the maintenance workers. They're all taking notes, Commander. Learning patterns, identifying weaknesses, planning. For what? Aria's smile turned absolutely feral. Commander, when humans really want to fight, we don't use armies. We use civilians. Grandmothers with homemade explosives. Teenagers with chemistry sets. Accountants who know exactly how to make your supply chain fail in the most spectacularly inconvenient ways possible. We turn every street corner into a potential ambush, Marcus added. Every building into a potential fortress. Every citizen into a potential weapon. And the beautiful part, Elena continued, is that you can't tell the difference between a harmless human and a dangerous one until it's too late. That sweet old lady selling flowers? She might be a retired chemical engineer who's been perfecting homemade toxins for 6 months. That kid delivering food? Could be carrying enough plastic explosive to level a city block. Vex 9 felt something he had never experienced before in his entire military career, genuine terror. Not fear of death, which was manageable, but fear of an enemy that couldn't be identified, targeted, or defeated through conventional means. You're describing terrorism, he said weakly. We're describing Tuesday, Arya replied. Commander, you keep thinking in terms of military action. This isn't military. This is anthropological. You've invaded a species that has spent its entire evolutionary history competing with itself. We've been refining the art of mutual destruction for millennia. Every human settlement you occupy becomes a classroom, Marcus explained. Every day you stay, we learn more about your technology, your psychology, your weaknesses. And every day, we get better at hurting you. Elena leaned forward, her voice dropping to barely above a whisper. Commander, we're offering you the chance to withdraw with honor. To tell your empire that humans are too troublesome to be worth conquering. That our worlds are too expensive to hold. And if we refuse? Arya stood up, and something in her posture changed. The casual, almost playful demeanor vanished, replaced by something that made Vex 9's every survival instinct scream warnings. Then, Commander, you'll discover why humans are the only species to have survived their own weapon of mass destruction. Twice. We'll teach you about human endurance, Marcus said, also rising. About our capacity for self-sacrifice. About what happens when you corner a species that has already proven it will destroy itself rather than submit. Elena was the last to stand, and when she did, Vex 9 finally understood what had been bothering him about these 3 humans. They weren't diplomats. They weren't even soldiers, not in any conventional sense. They were something far more dangerous. They were representatives of a species that had looked extinction in the face and chosen spite instead of surrender. The choice is yours, Commander, Elena said softly. Leave now, and this ends. Stay, and we'll show you why 47 previous conquests didn't prepare you for humanity. Vex 9 looked at the tactical display, where his supposedly invincible fleet was slowly falling apart. He thought about the reports from occupied worlds, where his soldiers were growing increasingly nervous about the humans who smiled and obeyed and watched everything with calculating eyes, and for the first time in his military career, Commander Vex 9 of the Kaelthri Empire began to calculate the cost of victory. We will need time to consider your proposal, he said finally. Of course, Elena replied with a diplomatic smile that didn't reach her eyes. Take all the time you need. We'll wait. After all, Arya added with that terrifying cheerfulness, we're very good at waiting. And planning. And remembering. The peace talks, Vex 9 realized, had ended the moment she stood up. Everything since then had been a lesson in why some victories weren't worth winning.